Hey friends, how are you doing? Brian here. I am on location in a bit of a strange place here for this video. I am at Monasterboice, Ireland, here at the site of some of the most famous high crosses in Ireland to talk about the book of Daniel. I didn't just come here to talk about the book of Daniel, but why not talk about Daniel now that we are here in this among these amazing ruins of a monastery here, of a tower, this great tower in the background, as well as some of the best high crosses right there, one of them in all of Ireland, dating from about 1,000 years ago. There's a scene on this cross that I want to show you, won't be able to see it perfectly, but which depicts a scene from the book of Daniel. And it's really stunning how many Old Testament scenes are actually on these crosses. You'd think, okay, it's a cross, depict Jesus, do a lot of New Testament stuff, right? But no, they actually show quite a lot of Old Testament scenes. Moses striking the rock, scenes from the life of David, all kinds of things like this. And this particular scene here, I thought was really fascinating to put on this cross because it's just one that I wouldn't have thought would have been depicted. So you can see here on this cross, all the way up the base, they've got all these great scenes, and then presumably Jesus up there, enthroned, just various things going on here. Some of them, it's not even totally easy to tell what's going on, but I think this one right here above my finger, if you can see it, you see these two guys on the edges? These are soldiers with kind of like torches, and you see three figures right here, and then a kind of angelic figure on top of it. I know that's not easy to see, so I'll try to put a link below to a clearer image of that if I can find one online by the time I post this. But at any rate, it's a scene of the three men in the fire thrown there by Nebuchadnezzar for failing to worship the image in Daniel chapter 3. As you will recall, the book of Daniel begins in chapter 1 with Daniel being taken in the exile to the court of Nebuchadnezzar, where he refuses to eat the king's food and drink the king's wine and do all of the things that he's supposed to do. And he has these three friends with him too, and they all basically do their kosher diet there in the exile in this place, and the king sees that they're strong and they become an important part of the court. In chapter 2, Daniel establishes his reputation as an interpreter of dreams. And then in chapter 3, Daniel is nowhere to be found suddenly, mysteriously, when Nebuchadnezzar erects this giant statue and says, everyone must worship this statue. One linguistic feature of that passage that's really fascinating is that one of the words used for the word music in that text in Aramaic, I was just looking at it a few minutes ago, is it sounds like a transliterated Greek word. It's the word zumphonia in Aramaic, which is the Greek word symphony, which is where we get our word symphony. So maybe suggesting a later date for a passage like this at a time when a Greek loanword like zumphonia would have been better known, but unclear. Scholars will, of course, debate the dating of these court tales of Daniel. And then the second half of the book seems possibly to even date from a completely different time period later. But at any rate, the king says, when you hear the sound of the pipe and the zither and the whatever, and the music, the zumphonia, you must fall down and worship this image. Daniel nowhere to be found. Presumably he's not off just worshiping the image. But the three young men, they will not worship the image. They're thrown in the fire and they are saved. Chapter 4 then, Daniel is suddenly just back again in his role as dream interpreter when the king has a dream of turning into an animal and all this kind of stuff. It raises the question maybe of a kind of pastiche or patchwork authorship for some of these tales. Maybe we're to assume, because at the end of chapter 2, the three men have some role out in the provinces, the text says, but then Daniel is in the court of the king, that maybe Daniel is somehow protected from having to go out and to worship the image or something like that. It's just a good example of how when reading the Old Testament, you have kind of like an option to do a narrative reading that assumes that Daniel is there, but just not involved, and the narrator didn't want to say what he was doing or how he escaped this moment. So you could come up with a narrative explanation like that. Or you could assume here that these were court tales that were adopted and these characters were cast in these roles. So more of a historical critical explanation of the text. Either way, pretty stunning to see the scene of these characters here just doing their thing, being protected from the fiery flames up there on this wonderful 1,000-year-old cross.